when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alls, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here's your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and Cassie Cruz.
And all you gotta do is sing a song.
Hello, everybody. I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Cassie Cruz.
And we are Love Conquers Alls.
And we've ventured now into the YouTube space, so you guys can all watch us now.
I get to see Cassie. She can see me. We get to see our guests. It's exciting. We do have to clean up our desks, though. And we're just...
And ourselves.
And ourselves, yeah. So, but we do it because we love it. And we're really excited to continue on this journey. And we're expanding. So it's good. It's all good. Right,
yes, it's fantastic.
And we have someone very special to both Cassie and I. And her name is Heather Cooper Ortner. She is the president and CEO of Alzheimer's Los Angeles. Like I said, they've been very supportive of both our films, Broken Memories, Cassie's and mine, My Mom and the Girl. And we have just fallen in love with their passion and their dedication to caregivers and people that are afflicted with Alzheimer's and dementia. And they couldn't be a group of nicer, more authentic people. And we can't do enough with them because we just support them 150%.
Exactly. And we want to be advocates. We want to create awareness. We want to be fundraising with them because the kind of services and the things that they provide for all of us, it's just incredible the amount of services that they have because we need them. We don't have a cure. And they are fighting for the funds to get that. They're helping the caregivers. They're helping the people that have the Alzheimer's and finding resources to help the caregivers sustain that caring that needs to happen.
But I just want to fill you in on her illustrious background.
Oh, please do, because she is illustrious.
And she's darling.
Okay,
well, Heather joined Alzheimer's Los Angeles as the president and CEO in the fall of 2017. She is a highly respected nonprofit leader, recognized for bringing an entrepreneurial spirit, which I love, to the healthcare arena. She is proactive and passionate. I already said that. And her work has contributed to a wealth of experience for healthcare-based organizations. And prior to this position that she had, she was working as a chief executive officer, CEO, of Dr. Susan Love's Research Foundation, whose mission is to achieve a future without breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that either.
But I am going to introduce her and have her come on because she's lovely and she's waiting. And I will do that now.
With no further ado.
I figure out how to do this.
Well, with no further ado,
hold on.
Here comes Heather.
Hi, Susie. Hi, Cassie. You guys are amazing. We love you so much.
We love you so much. We really do. And Kara.
Totally
and
true.
everybody.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, and Angela.
Yeah.
Everybody in your organization, always.
Well, we think of you as part of our organization. You guys should know that. We really do consider you part of our Alzheimer's LA family. You've done so much for us along the way as well, and it's really been a beautiful partnership. You've helped raise awareness about our organization and visibility for us as we've supported and helped to raise visibility for your amazingly beautiful moving project. So it's a beautiful partnership.
Thank you. Thank you so much because, both of us started our projects without knowing whether it was the right thing to do. And it turned out to be, for me, one of the best things I could have done. So, therein lies the silver lining, which I always talk about of, finding a way to make the best out of the situation. And I'm so happy. Like I couldn't be more proud in that respect, in that I have this relationship with Cassie, and they brought us together because we were every festival that we were at together, we were in a block together. And we, they put us together. Put the Alzheimer films together.
Yeah. Well, and
you guys were destined. You were beshared, right? You were. There was no option but for the two of you to get together.
Totally.
Well, you know what's interesting though is when I started my film, I didn't plan on becoming an advocate or even thinking of that. I mean, I obviously was touched by it with my family, many members. I became a caregiver for my gram, and I was touched by it. I wanted to make a film that actually showed the caregivers as heroes and what they went through and the experiences, and also about how family members can look different and the different options that are out there. I wanted to make a family-friendly movie so everybody could see it. And then I was absolutely blessed because after we were done, I got to meet Alzheimer's Los Angeles, right? I got to meet that advocacy and that opportunity for us to advocate in a whole other way that I had no idea that that's what this trajectory was going to take me on.
We want to know what drew you to the senior.
It wasn't so very specifically. When I heard about this position originally, I actually wasn't looking for a job. I was pretty happy in the breast cancer world, which sounds kind of weird to say.
Yeah.
But the breast cancer advocates and the breast cancer community is also very tight-knit, very close, very positive and forward-looking, caring, dynamic community. And I was really felt deeply entrenched. But when I heard about this position, I forwarded it to my husband, and he basically said, "This sounds like you." So healthcare nonprofits have been where I've chosen to make my career. I really love the intersection of healthcare and nonprofit. We get to do things that you can't do in a doctor's office. We get to take people outside of the doctor's office, become a trusted voice, provide reassurance and resources that you don't get when you're in the doctor's office. We think of ourselves as complementary. So when this came up, it gave me the opportunity to really pair my professional goals with a personal passion. And that's obviously because this has been in my family as well. My grandmother had what we now believe was Alzheimer's disease. Think it's quite possible that her mother may have had it as well, although I think at the time they called it hardening of the arteries. But I was on hand for much of the caregiving of my grandmother while my mother was really the primary caregiver. My grandmother's symptoms probably started in high school. I remember her getting really angry at things. And then in college and after college, in fact, I was at UCLA and my grandmother lived in a condo on Wilshire Boulevard at the time. And so I was the closest person to take a phone call when she had confused nighttime and morning and didn't know what time it was and kept waking up and thinking it was time to take her medicine and actually had an accidental overdose. So I was the first one in the ER to say, no, this wasn't intentional. She doesn't know what's going on. She has dementia.
Question. I'm just wondering, did they try to put her in a 72-hour or anything like that, or?
They examined it, but they were able to connect with her GP, and she was not put on a 72-hour hold. But they initially, when I got there and she was still unconscious, her arms, her wrists were tied down. It was very traumatic. So.
Because Heather, I had the same experience. My mother, they mistook her for being, they brought her in for an examination when she was at Silverado. And they thought she was a crazy woman. They put her in a 72-hour lockup. And when I went to find her, she was tethered to her chair. And
it's heartbreaking.
That's just rough. That's that 5150. That's what they call it, right? They call it a 5150, like in case you're going to harm yourself or others. So they lock you down. For that
we hear about that, unfortunately, far too often, that people that are police and first responders don't know enough about dealing with people with dementia to understand what's really going on. But then later, my mother ended up with the disease as well, with dementia as well. So repeated it again. We lost my mother just over a year ago.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, January 30th of last year.
Oh, wow. A year. Oh,
yeah, this has been quite a year. It has. Last year was a year of firsts of everything without her, and we were so close. And
I feel you. I can start crying just thinking about it because I know I dread it. I think about it all the time.
Well, don't think about it. It's impossible not to, but try to live in the moment and enjoy that she's here.
I do. We're zooming now in the coronavirus time. I've got a little baby on one end who doesn't know where to look, and I got a mother who doesn't know where to look.
It's really quite amazing that there are 4 generations of you. That's pretty spectacular.
It is, and I'm very grateful. I really am.
You are blessed. I have a question, Heather. How long did your mother have Alzheimer's? How long were you one of her primary caregivers as well?
My father really was her primary caregiver. They lived not far from here, so I was the go-to resource. When she would become agitated, he would call me and say, "I can't get her to calm down. She's yelling and screaming." I'd get on the phone with her, and I'd say, put on some Elvis, and she would, or put on the Beatles, and she would start to relax a little bit, and as she was talking to me, so I could kind of talk her down from some of those moods. But
How old is your mom?
my mom was 75 when she passed, just
Oh
after.
my goodness, this is too young.
So she was too young, but my mother had another neurodegenerative disease that actually was what took her. It wasn't the Alzheimer's that took her. So
wow.
she had another probably unrelated neurodegenerative disease that she'd had for a long time. But toward the end of her life, the Alzheimer's was all consuming. The dementia was what was really the focus of our days in terms of providing care for her.
Sure. No, I mean, my mom was about that age when my movie takes place, and that's such a hard stage that they go through. That because my mom got it when we diagnosed her when she was 73, and so and now she's 85, 86.
Wow. You're like, oh wow, 86.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
No, she's had it for a very long time, but that now she's very happy. She's complicit and
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she's lovely. You say to her, "How are you doing, Mom?" Good, and she's
that's wonderful.
And I can sleep at night, but before it was like
a lot of agitation.
I say they're straddling the fence. They know that they have a disease. They of course they do, but they don't want to. They're in denial.
How long were you caregiving for your mom when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
Probably about 5 years altogether. And I think she probably had it before that. And, we just didn't really know what was going on, which you would have figured we would have known because we'd been through it with my grandmother. But
you didn't want to think that was happening, I'm sure.
No.
It's like, no. And also she had this other degenerative disease that you had thought maybe that's really what was going on with her at that time?
That was not behavioral in any way. So it was not really, they were like the new behaviors, the getting angry, the not remembering. I thought she was being manipulative. I didn't understand what was. We already talked about this. Why are we talking about it again? And she would be like, well, I want to revisit it. Just tell me again. And I was like, so it was frustrating.
See, that's a good answer though, because she covered it up by saying,
yes, she did.
Right? I mean, that's a very good answer.
Yeah.
Yes, she did. And she compensated.
Yeah, because she didn't want to tell you that she forgot. She compensated, she said.
She compensated, because that, and if they are very,
clever,
if they are aware of it, they are very good at hiding it. My mom was too. My mom would be like, okay, gotcha. All right, we'll just keep it there. Got you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good for her.
All right.
But it's because of exactly the reason why we're doing this podcast, and exactly the reason I think, Heather, why you're doing what you're doing is this is an epidemic that's happening. It's prevalent everywhere.
Yep.
We have to raise awareness. The first responders do have to understand about how to handle and also identify if that's even happening, and if this is what's playing into the party, or is it really drug related, or is it that, or is it this? Because it's its own identifying disease, but really hard to identify.
Well, if you don't know it and someone's in that stage, right, Heather, you can it can be mistaken for something else.
Right. The other thing that happens sometimes is people will say, no, I understand, no, I'm fine. And they may appear as if they're fully in command of themselves. And so if you are asking a person, well, do you want to go to the hospital? And they say, absolutely no, the paramedics aren't supposed to take them unless it's obviously like a life and death thing. So it's a really hard situation. We've actually done some advocacy at the state level and worked on legislation to train EMTs. And so it is now part of California law to have EMTs do an additional 2 hours of training around dementia communicating with people with dementia and their caregivers.
Yes.
And it's understanding basic things like what if the caregiver is the patient? You still can't leave that person with dementia home by themselves, right? That's a safety risk for that person. So our first responders have to learn how to deal with our families, and we're working on it, and they all have the best of intentions, and we partner with a number of organizations in the community to help them teach their staff and their people, and people want to learn. When they do learn, they're actually grateful for the knowledge and how to apply it.
It's super important because, like I said, my mom ended up, immobile after that because that was the last time she walked because they didn't know. And it's just, and I know it's just frustrating. And that's why I included that in my film was, the scene with the police because, and I showed what it looks like for them to have an understanding to go, okay, gotcha. But they still weren't, it still was, it took a really nice cop to actually take a second to go, all right, I see what's happening here.
Yeah, it does take somebody who has a little bit of empathy and compassion and some understanding to be able to see that this isn't just somebody who is either on drugs or just otherwise mentally ill.
Or actually believing them, like my mom would say, I don't know who this person is that I'm with. She's following me. I don't know her. And my mom's character would be like, And so they were like, well, who do we believe, right?
Yeah, right. It's very hard. These are very hard situations.
And that's really what you're talking about, though, is that education, that becoming aware, how to deal with it. And really, I think why all three of us are doing what we're doing is to help. That is definitely a big part of it.
Absolutely, Cassie, you hit the nail on the head. The best thing we can do is educate our families, educate our communities around what dementia looks like. And there's no single story for what it looks like. Everybody experiences it differently. It's such a wide spectrum of behaviors and ways of communicating and how it looks. Some people remain in, perfectly good physical health for very, very long. But they lose communication skills, or they lose their ability to problem solve, and their rational abilities slowly disappear. It's not just that they forget things. It's a far more complex disease.
And the education is so important because when I look back at old home video of me talking to my mom, because I remember Lisa Givens was one of the first people who told me about Alzheimer's, because she went through her mom, and we had a mutual friend, and she took me to lunch and she said, please videotape your mom. And because the stages, you never know when it's going to progress, and then you've lost that that part of her. So I took her advice and I would videotape. But I mean, sometimes I look back and I go, oh my God, I just want to tell myself to shut up, because I would say things like, Mommy, what day is it? No, you know what day it is. Tell me what day it is. Come on, Because and I want to kill myself because I know that I was asking her to do something that's just ridiculous.
It's because at that time, though, Susie, you were in denial that it was happening, and you thought you could change it.
I thought I could talk her out of it. I thought I was going to be like, we're so close. I got your back on this, Mom.
Right.
We're going to get you out of this.
One of the education programs we've done is called "Are They Doing This to Annoy Me?"
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's one of the first things people think about is, why is he behaving this way? Why is she doing this to me? She's driving me crazy. What is this about? Why is she doing this? And why won't she stop? Right. So it takes a very long time for people to understand that they're not doing it on purpose. They actually have no control. And they don't even know, they don't even have awareness that they are behaving this way.
No. And even how, when I think we all experience this, is that they have lucid moments where, they have these lucid moments. And I would sometimes say, because my mom would often come in, when the year she lived with me, and see my daughters with me, and she'd go, oh, I'm sorry, I see you have friends. I won't bother you. And I go, amazing. Oh, those are your granddaughters. And she'd go, right. I know. And then later, I go, that's really hurtful when you say that and you don't. And she'd go, what'd I say? And I would tell her, oh my God, she'd cry. She said, because
she just didn't know.
No.
I
Oh,
love this one. We're all sitting around the table and my aunt is saying something, and then Graham asked her the question again, and she goes, I just got done telling you, it's been 3 times now. This is my 3rd time. Mom, you're scaring me. And she goes, well, how do you think I feel?
Totally.
that's great. That's
You
great.
know, because it's true. And, it's that trap. And it's like, they look exactly the same, but they're
Yeah,
actually strangers now, even to themselves.
Yep.
And
yeah,
how scary must it be to not know where you are from moment to moment,
Panic.
and to not understand? And that kind of information is just beyond my understanding, because I do have the moment to moment, connecting the dots. And
yeah.
that's what I want to ask you about, Heather.
Mhm.
Alzheimer's LA, what is your mission statement?
So our mission is to provide education, support, and resources to local families in Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties to support families living with the disease today. We also do support a small amount of research, locally funded research as well. We are an entirely local organization.
Mhm.
We are a standalone organization where it's just us. And we do everything we raise stays right here in the greater LA area. And we
Wonderful.
focus on our community. We are Angelinos, and we are we've been in this community for almost 40 years, and this we are part of this community.
And how does that differ? I know, because sometimes when I'm doing fundraising
Mhm.
for ALZLA, people will say, "Oh, I donated to something," and I'm like, "That's not
Yeah,
our organization." Like, so what is the difference,
it's
and
very
what is the
confusing.
advantages between being a local organization and a national
So
organization?
the National Alzheimer's Association is a good organization. They do
Mhm.
good work. We actually used to be affiliated with them, and about 5 years ago we disaffiliated and became
Mhm.
independent. So the advantage is that all the money that we raise stays here and supports our local community. We also have a tremendous amount more independence, and that leads to higher levels of innovation. So we are able to really focus on the highly diverse community of Los Angeles in a way that would be much harder for us to do if we were part of a national entity. So what that means is we focus on providing education and services to highly diverse communities, and providing them with socially competent, with culturally competent, linguistically competent materials that fit the way that they want to receive them. We work in partnership with our communities. We have deep networks in both the Latino community and in the African American community, as well as in the Asian Pacific Islander community, which by itself is a challenge, because the API community itself it's dozens of languages and cultures on its own. And then even within the Latino community, you have our Mexican American, which is one of the dominant communities here in LA. But you have people from all over the world whose first language is Spanish.
Right.
And culturally, there are differences. Linguistically, there are differences. They use different vocabulary sometimes. So
Totally.
we work hard to really connect on a highly local level, to develop relationships with each community, to not just meet them where they are, but to give them what they need in the way they tell us they need it and want it.
So important, Heather. We just interviewed a woman who is Korean,
Mhm.
and she became her father's caregiver.
Mm.
The mother was there, but what she was up against, their cultural, very traditional cultural, background, and mores, values, everything, and the amount of shame that comes with this disease, and in that particular culture is really.
It's great. It's great. And it's
It
real.
causes so much more conflict than there already is.
Yep. Stigma is one of the biggest issues we have throughout all of these communities. And it's not only diverse communities. I mean, we see it in the white community too. For the longest time, my father wouldn't let us say the word Alzheimer's around my mother. He didn't want her to know, and he didn't want anybody else to know. And both my parents were highly educated.
Right.
So
is it based on shame or embarrassment, do you think, Heather?
I think it's based a lot on lack of understanding. There used to be a lot of shame around not knowing what it was, or thinking that it was somehow a deficiency in the person, and therefore in some cultures it's been a deficiency in the family. So families will keep this very, very tightly held within family units. They don't want to ask for help. There are some cultures that it's a sign of weakness to ask for help or to let these things outside the family, or to actually be needing to ask for help. So I think a lot of that, one of the best tools we have to combat stigma is it comes back to education. People do not understand that this is not just grandma or grandpa getting old, that it is a true neurodegenerative disease. It's a disease of the brain, and there is no cure. In fact, it's the only top 5 cause of death in this country that has no treatment, no form of prevention, and no cure. So there is almost nothing we can do for people except for provide from a traditional kind of therapeutic intervention. There's nothing we can do for people. Minimal. There are some drugs, there are a couple drugs on the market, and they do work for some people. So it's really important people talk to their doctors.
How many different types of Alzheimer's is there? Because you're saying it's not just for your grandma and grandpa. There's so many different types as well.
So that's a really good question.
Learning.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. And the way that you phrased it is actually really interesting, because what you asked was how many different types of Alzheimer's there are. And Alzheimer's is well, we don't know, frankly. At the moment, we've always thought of Alzheimer's as a single disease, but now there's a school of thought that there may be different forms of Alzheimer's itself. But Alzheimer's is the most prevalent or the most highly diagnosed form of dementia. So if you actually think of dementia as the umbrella over all of these different neurodegenerative brain diseases, and they all have very similar things. So there's a process in the brain where the cells begin to lose functioning and to die, and sometimes that leads to different changes in the brain. So there's Alzheimer's, is the form of dementia that most people are familiar with. Probably the next biggest is vascular dementia, and vascular dementia can look like Alzheimer's, but it looks different on CAT scans because it's a vascular disease, and sometimes people on CAT scan or MRI, they'll show that they've had something like small, like tiny strokes.
Oh, wow.
So it looks a little bit different, and sometimes depending on where the vascular damage is, they can have different types of symptoms and behaviors. There are other types of dementia, like there's a Parkinsonian version where people have more physical. There's Lewy bodies, which can sometimes resemble Parkinsonian, and people have more physical symptoms and sometimes have trouble with speech. There's frontal temporal, which can affect everything from, again, behaviors, but also things like hallucinations and delusions and things like that. And some
it's
of
like a head injury. Yeah.
And yes, and then there are people who have had profound head injuries who end up with dementia, and sometimes they have, if it's a single head injury or multiple head injuries, we see it sometimes with football players, or other kinds of professional athletes that are prone to head injuries. You can see that boxers, for example, sometimes they develop these kinds of neurodegenerative diseases as well. But so really the umbrella term is dementia, and then all of these are different forms of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is, again, the most common of them. Our programs basically break down into what we do clinically and what we do in the community education. We spent a little bit of time talking about our community ed program. We do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of workshops, seminars, access to information, education, everything from how to keep your home safe to providing ongoing courses and classes for people to learn. We also have a network of over 200 support groups that we work with, and these are support groups that are all over the community. There is probably one in a language that anybody needs at a location that they can get to. Right now, everything is online, but generally speaking, we're physically all over the greater LA area. And then we also have our more highly focused clinical programs. Our care counselors are probably one of the programs that we're known best for. So our care counselors are social workers who have expertise in working with families with dementia, and they work one-on-one with families to provide everything from a little bit more in-depth education to helping people develop a care plan. So sometimes, I mean, we've talked about this. Sometimes a family isn't all on the same page.
Right.
I can tell you both my brothers who live out of the area had a much harder time thinking that anything was actually happening with our mom,
Same
because
with me, same exact.
they were like, when she
They're
would
removed. They're
yeah,
they're
they are. And when
they're
they
like,
would
hey,
talk
she
to her,
sounded great. She sounds great.
yes, she was compensating. So she would do that for them. She pulled it together.
Sure.
She dumped all the crap on me. No,
Me
I'm kidding.
too. Because we're the daughters. We're the daughters. No,
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
also she got
overreacting.
to.
Stop it, Susie. You're what are
Yes. Oh my gosh.
saying,
Why do you
right?
always have to make everything so dramatic?
Exactly.
Because
Well,
I'm
it's
the girl.
because, well, it's also because too, you're the closest and you see
Yes.
each other all the time, and also they can't fool you.
No.
No,
you
she
are-
couldn't. And actually also, I think that there's, I was highly sarcastic when I said she, dumped all the crap. But the reason I think she gave me the crap was because she was most comfortable with me.
She was
It
safe.
was a safe place for her to not have to fully be compensating all the time. Like she could just,
Right.
unwind, be angry, be sad, have a crying jag that went on for 2 hours, and I would just say, it's okay.
Oh.
So, but it's hard. So our care counselors will work with families, help them get on the same page for what they want for their loved one. We will, if the person is still able to, and if they're in the early stages of the disease, or they have mild cognitive impairment, which is a kind, not really a stage, but almost a state,
Right.
before people become fully symptomatic with something like dementia or Alzheimer's. And not everybody who gets mild cognitive impairment will develop Alzheimer's, but many do.
Right.
But we still will help these families, understand what is important to the person with the disease, so that their wishes and desires are able to be carried out when they're no longer able to speak for themselves.
So important. So
important.
Really, really critical. It gives them a chance to put things in order, to understand, and it gets families all on the same page, understanding how to work together. We will coach families working through really tough decisions, like, if like with my parents, it was, my dad primarily caring for my mom, and for some families that's untenable. At some point, some people really are safer and healthier in a facility, but that's not an option for everybody. It's not an option for many people financially, and it's not an option for many people culturally. They will not put a loved one in a facility because it is a betrayal in some cultures.
Right.
So, but if you are making the commitment to care for your loved one at home, or if you have no choice but to care for your loved one at home, it is hard work. It is 24/7.
It's daunting, and it's like no one tells you what the ramifications are of that, and it's so much harder. It can be so much harder on you as the caregiver than the person that you're caring for.
After a certain point, it is.
Yes.
After a certain point, it is incredibly difficult on the family members, and and harder on family members than on the person. It's just and if you've never cared for somebody or watched somebody care for somebody with dementia, it's impossible to describe what it's like on a daily basis to have to provide 24/7 daily care for years and years on end.
Right.
It causes huge levels of stress, depression, anxiety. We really worry about caregivers and being able to manage their own self-care. And we often hear about caregivers who become ill in the process of caring for their loved one. It's not unusual.
100%. And I mean, I always make the reference to Benjamin Button, because it reminds me of, like, when you have it's a lot like caring for a young child, but the difference is you get rewarded with children because they're developing and they're learning. So every day it's like, oh, I have to change their diaper. Now I don't have to change their diaper because but instead our loved ones are going the opposite way. And
it's a decline.
And they don't know how to thank you because they don't remember. And there's a lot of, it just feels unrewarding directly.
Right.
You know that you have to get it from another place, which they can get it from Alzheimer's LA. That's the support that they can get to say, no, this is normal. This
Yeah.
is real. This
It
is
is, yeah.
what happens.
It's the epitome
And
of unconditional love is what it is.
it
It
really
is.
is, because it's thankless from them directly, and they don't even remember who you are,
Yeah.
and they're maybe even mad at you for helping them.
They're
Totally.
frequently mad at
And-
their caregivers,
Right,
actually.
All
Yeah.
because
the
they
time.
don't want to do something,
Yeah.
and they are, hey, and they have a bank account, and they have a say, and they have they like
Yeah.
and it's like, wait a second, you're not even of right mind. Let's get on the plan, and you didn't even know it, and it's like, oh,
I
they're just
know.
so-
I actually gave my mom a credit card that was not good anymore because and I gave her like a checking account, and I just
so
I
she
gave
can
her
write her own
checkbook.
bills.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And then
awesome.
one day she got really mad at me. She was very, very upset when she was living with me. So I still have it. She wrote me a check for only $100. Wrote me a check and it said, "Have a nice life."
Get out of here now. you're dismissed.
She was paying you off.
She says, "I'm
You're
done."
dismissed. But I wanted to say something that you mentioned too, Heather, is that you talked about when your mother was in a distressed state,
Yes.
that you had your father put on music that was relatable to her.
Yeah.
And that's something that Susie and I've talked about a ton.
Mhm.
And we know, and this has been proven now, and this is something that you could probably speak on, that music will connect them back to a place of themselves.
Yeah. Connects
And-
to the emotional center. It actually helps them reconnect with emotion, which is something that's very, very hard for people with dementia to be able to articulate. Like, they can't tell you how they're feeling. They can't tell you why they're frustrated.
don't
They
know.
just are.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, music has this amazing ability to connect in some part way back in I once heard somebody say the reptilian part of our brain.
Yeah.
Right, where those connections are formed so early and so deeply that when we hear music that we relate to, it can be transformative.
Mhm.
We have a partnership actually with the LA Opera, which is pretty
Oh.
amazing. They're another fabulous local organization, and we love our partnership with the LA Opera.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize that. That's great. Do
They're
tell us
really
about all
wonderful,
that.
and they're one of our biggest supporters. So I'm happy to give them a shout out wherever I can as well. But one of the things they do is they come to our Memory Mornings program. So our Memory Mornings is a program for people who are mostly in the mid stages, sometimes a little bit later. They come and they have some activities. So we do different things with them. So when we have a program with the LA Opera, they will send a singer and an accompanist to play on the keyboards for the performer, and they will sing everything from a Carmen aria to How Much Is That Doggy in the Window.
Oh my God. God
And
bless them.
they are phenomenal, and I mean, you should hear when they do things like Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Yeah.
People who are nonverbal will stand up and
start singing.
and at the end of it, they'll say, "Play ball."
Yes.
I mean, it is
It's that
phenomenal.
hook.
Yes.
It's that hook that they have, and all of a sudden it brings them back to themselves again. So, and that's great to know.
It's powerful.
These
It's
are the things
magic.
we're learning.
Yeah. So with this program, we actually work also with an art therapist, with a music therapist, who then engages the group to connect to those emotions. Where did you first hear that song? What memory do you have of hearing that song? And it's really wonderful to hear these stories about, these people sharing stories from when they were growing up and life experiences from earlier in their lives. So music is a pretty powerful tool. And if you're at home caring for someone, get your Alexa plugged in, because I got to say, Alexa play Elvis worked every time.
That's what I said. Alexa, play Frank. And she was like, "I'm on it."
I think we once said something like, "Alexa, play the Beatles." And she was like, "Would you like the White Album or Abbey Road?"
You're even training Alexa. That's awesome. So that brings me to a question, which I'm dealing with, and I know everybody else is dealing with, that has somebody that has Alzheimer's or dementia, which is the COVID-19 that really doing a number on how we care for our loved ones or not care for them because we can't get near them, if they're in a facility. So how has that affected what you guys do right now?
Okay. So when this all happened, it was, we were getting calls, and we are still getting calls from families who are on the verge of crisis. So we were getting and connecting with them when they were feeling quite desperate and needing help in a number of different ways. And you're right, it can be broken down into two different groups. Number one is the group of people who are stuck at home through this, and 24/7 in the house with somebody with dementia is a challenge. And again, remember, a lot of our clients are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and with no ability to work, and with people who had been providing, family members who had been earning, no longer earning, access to food, access to sanitary supplies, the ability to buy them, the ability to leave the house to go get them, all of that went away in an instant. So we had people, we have really flown into high gear to help people with how to manage caring for somebody at home during this.
Right.
It is quite difficult. We have a number of resources up on our website, which is alzheimersla.org. And there's a lot up there for people caring for someone at home. But we were also really struck by how many people just needed routine suggestions for how to create a schedule. They could no longer take their person to their routine programs. They can't leave the house to get groceries, as we talked about. So how to make all of these things happen. And in some cases, we were able to connect them with other resources in the community for meal delivery services and delivery from pharmacies and other partners to be able to provide products and things that they need just to get through the day.
The other really scary dilemmas for someone who has a loved one at home and they're caring for them at home is, God forbid they get sick themselves.
Yes.
What is put into plan, to take care of their person when they?
Some of them have no plans. There's no backup. There's no additional family. I mean, and even if there is, sometimes they're out of state, they're not available, or they don't want to come in and risk getting sick themselves.
Right.
So we have had increasing levels of anxiety, depression, fear.
Huge.
All of these are significantly on the rise. And even though the initial shock of how we're going to do this is over, caregiving is exhausting, and this situation is putting additional long-term stress. And we're at 2 months of being at home, basically. We're at week 8 here, or this is the 8th week in LA that we've been pretty much in our home, 7th or 8th week. And it's a very tough, long slog with no breaks.
Well,
so the longer this goes on for people at home, the longer we worry about health and mental health for our caregivers as well. And it's also really frustrating for the person because they don't necessarily understand why they can't go for a walk, why they can't go to their normal
Of course, and they're going to
routine.
forget if you tell them anyway. I used to have notes all over the house, right?
Yeah.
right.
But so if you don't have to give me the answer to it, other than if that worst case scenario happens, can people contact Alzheimer's Los Angeles?
Yes.
And maybe you can guide them with some kind of
Yes.
solution, short-term
and,
solution.
Yeah, and sometimes we're able to do things like work with respite partners to help provide some care for the person that needs it. So the person who may become positive with COVID-19 can isolate and care for themselves. So yes, they should absolutely call us, and we will absolutely work to help provide resources.
You'd say yes, but I just thought I'd ask anyway.
Of
Absolutely.
course, and I would say to this is that COVID-19 affects me greatly, and I don't have Alzheimer's, and I'm not caregiving for anybody at this time. So my heart is broken and goes out to everybody. My prayers are going out to every caregiver out there, every person that has Alzheimer's, of course, everybody in the whole world, but especially with this pressure and this newly founded situation. I'm not even comfortable leaving my house. I feel like I have to, when I go to the grocery store, I'm going to go to a war zone. I'm like armed up and masked up and glasses and everything. And then when I come home, I strip down and go take a shower. And can you imagine having that anxiety and the depression? And now we're dealing on top of this, caregiving for a whole other human being and somebody that's not going to have any memory. And that whole pressure that occurs, it's exhausting. And I want to say one comment. I want to say one comment to the caregivers. you have to find the resources. You must find and reach out and ask people for help so you can get what you need during this time so you can sustain. Because if you don't sustain and live, you will not be there to caregive for the person that you love that you're caregiving for. So that is what I know Heather is built and Heather is dealing with for all of you guys. And that's the reason why we wanted her to be able to talk about COVID-19 situation, because it's a big, huge deal. It is not little.
Like last week, I had friends texting me, watch Rachel Maddow. She's talking about everybody should take their, their parents home out of the assisted living. Quick, do it now. And I'm like, hold on. What? That's not like you just go, come home now.
Yeah. So that's okay. So now we can shift a little bit and talk about people with family members in these facilities. And it's true. I mean, as a group, they are the hardest hit group, and it is terrifying. And one of my best friends, her father-in-law is in a facility here in the Valley, and it's like 2 miles from where they live, and they can't even get in to see him. And it's hard. It's really, really frustrating, and it is terrifying because it's so much out of your control. Mm-hmm. But pulling somebody out of what is hopefully a safe environment is maybe not the best thing. If your loved one happens to be in one of those facilities that does have a high outbreak rate, then you probably want to speak to, again, call us, talk to our care counselors, let us help you make some decisions that are appropriate for you and your family, and understand what mechanisms are being put into place to help protect your loved one in the facility.
Right.
So, and that's a really important thing for people who have somebody there right now, is to understand what are the protocols in place in the facility. And if the protocols put in place are appropriate and safe, then chances are your loved one is better off staying there.
It's the best place for them, right?
Right. Often it is. Also because, change, disruptions are very stressful for a person with dementia, and making these kinds of adjustments and transitions can actually cause more stress to a person and can lead to just, setbacks and more challenges. So really, really have to understand the pros and cons to your personal situation before you just make a blanket statement about everybody should be keeping their person at home or everybody should be putting them in a facility.
Exactly.
There's no easy answer in this right now for people. It's an impossible situation.
But I think you're right.
Everybody.
I think you're right, Heather, about finding out what kinds of protocol that the specific location that your family member's at, what do they have in place, right? Because we all just saw that the front page of the LA Times was, I'm going to say it, Silverado. My mom used to be a resident there. And, and it's a shame because they obviously didn't adhere to, not transferring people, and, which you shouldn't, at this time when we're on lockdown, they shouldn't be transferring. And you as a caregiver should know, you have to advocate. That's the best way, I guess, you could advocate for your loved one, is by making sure that they're adhering to their protocol.
Right, and understanding what the protocols are. So what are the numbers of staff on duty? When and how is your loved one receiving meals? Are they still doing communal eating? Because they should not be communal eating. Right, so what are the protocols around, PPE? That personal protective equipment we hear about in the media all the time. Are masks mandatory? Is your loved one being asked to put on a mask if they leave their room, so that it's protecting them and protecting others? So all of these things you really have to understand. And in fact, we've been getting a lot of questions on this through our helpline, and we did a blog just last week. It went out in our newsletter about this, and there's some really helpful hints in there. And bottom line is, you have to demand communication. You have to be vigilant on communicating with the management of the facility and demand that they respond to you. And they have an obligation to share with you what's going on. They have an obligation to share with you if there are any positive cases in that facility, and to let you know what the potential exposure for your loved one is. And with that kind of information flow, then you are as good as you're going to get in terms of having the data you need to be able to make decisions to care for your loved one.
Right.
The state and the city or the county have also put a higher focus on this, and there's now testing in all of these facilities, but testing available for all of these facilities.
Yeah.
So ideally, you know, in theory, it's got to be coming from outside in, right? So if visitors
it has to be the staff.
are, right, so right, if there's no visitors, then it's got to be staff. So if the staff is being tested, and if residents are being tested on a regular basis, then you should be able to stop it as it develops, or minimize any kind of spread, right?
Absolutely.
So now that there's more testing throughout the city of LA and the county of LA, and the state has put additional resources into helping keeping our loved ones who are in skilled nursing and in these types of memory assisting, memory care units available, then we should be able to have greater information or access to information to help keep them safe. But this is, again, there is no easy answer. Bringing the person home isn't an easy answer, and keeping them there isn't an easy answer.
Right. But I think you're right, though, educating yourself on, you know, everything you can of the facility that your loved one's at is the most important and the best thing you can do, the most powerful thing you can do. And you're right. And absolutely the testing has gotten, thank God, you know, more prevalent, because they're doing it where my mom is at the Jewish home, and they just found they are amazing. They keep us informed like on a daily basis, and through this
they
testing,
should be.
Yeah, and it's wonderful, and I'm so grateful. They found one of the staff members who was not symptomatic had it, and now they're quarantined. So this is how we can stop it, you know?
Right.
That's
the testing's the key. And here's the other thing is that, you know, everybody is so different, every case, every situation, just like a snowflake. There's no two that are the same. And so they're very unique. And that is exactly what your organization is doing for Southern California, because Angelenos are very different than the rest of the world. We have a different kind of melting pot here. We have a different cultural way of living, and there's different ways for us to look at that. We can look at groups, but then each group has each individual person, and the way Alzheimer's is, it acts different and looks different. So it's very hard to identify. So I'm super grateful that you're doing that. I have a question for you. The people that are in the facilities or at home, you're doing virtual programs, right? You're like art. And I mean, I saw some great art virtual programs that you're doing. That is crafts and dancing and movement, because that also, like the music, connects.
And, so that's our Memory Mornings program.
Right?
Yeah.
Creates a routine for the people either at home or in a facility, and also making sure that the loved ones are connecting, if their loved one is in a facility, connecting with them virtually, even if they don't understand.
So that's another thing, right? If your loved one is in a facility, hopefully they are keeping them enriched in some way, but you can also request to do FaceTime or Skype or Zoom, you know, to have them use a company laptop or somebody's cell phone and help them with FaceTime, so that you have the opportunity to see and connect. I mean, it's very, very hard. We hear, for example, I was telling you about my friend's father-in-law, and he keeps asking for his son. He keeps saying, when is he going to come visit me? When, you know, why isn't he coming? And then he gets angry that he thinks that he's, you know, avoiding him and ignoring him and has forgotten about him, and they feel isolated and rejected.
Sad and hurt.
Yes, and that's a really hard thing to contend with when it's just not in their power to visit him right now. But yes, we do have some online, thank you for your question, Cassie. We do have some online enrichment programs, but the majority of what we have are some suggestions for how to keep your person on a schedule at home, and then also some kind of learn at home video-based programs for caregivers. So there's some tools and resources for the caregivers. We actually have support groups both in English and Spanish every workday, Monday through Friday, at different times of the day. We have found that, and they're also virtual. Some of them are telephone based. We've learned, as much as we thought everybody was going to go straight to video, some people really aren't comfortable with video, and they really want to just be on the phone.
The OG.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't make me put on makeup.
No, it's not even that. It's just, I don't know how to talk to a computer. I understand that they're there, but I don't want it. So we've got both telephone and video-based support groups going on,
and they can find everything at alzheimerslosAngeles.org.
AlzheimersLA.org. Alzheimer's Los Angeles will get you there. We redirect it all, but it's alzheimersla.org.
.org. Don't forget it's org, not com.
That's right.
And if they don't have it, they will find it for you. I promise.
Absolutely.
It's like a
connect
family.
you.
You will find a new family. Don't do this alone. You can't do this alone.
It's impossible.
No, you can't do it alone. You need a whole village. You need a whole team. You need all your resources. You need every resource that's available. Also, we'll make sure on our podcast that we put the website in the bio.
And put our helpline phone number also. Some people, again,
do.
remember they still want to connect by phone. So the helpline is 844-HELP-ALZ, which is 844, I have to read it, 435-7259.
Absolutely.
Do it one more time. Do it one more time, Heather.
844-435-7259.
And that stands for?
844-HELP-ALZ.
HELP-ALZ. And if you're not in Los Angeles and you're listening to this,
call us anyway.
Call them anyway, and they'll tell you who to get in touch with in your area.
We have friends all over the country. We've taken calls and emails from the UK. We're happy to help.
Oh, we have people from that are listening to us in Germany and in Canada, and so
all over the world.
Absolutely. Listen, we have a pop-up on our website. If you go to our website during our business hours, it will pop up, and you can chat with somebody online, and we can help just connect you to people in your area, or we can just get you on the phone and have a conversation to give you what you need and help direct you. We will help anybody, no matter where they are, who they are, where they come from, and we don't ask any questions. We just are here to help anybody who needs it.
And she's not lying. She's telling the truth.
Yeah.
It's true. It can be anonymous as well. Like, you don't have to identify yourself.
You don't have to.
Call from a block number if that's what you need, but definitely get the support. Reach out.
I mean, you don't have to worry about that stuff, because we don't keep that. We keep records about who calls us, but only, again, if people grant us permission. But we also don't ask things like immigration status or income. Like, we don't care about that. We're just not interested. If you've got a person that you're trying to care for, or if you yourself are having some memory issues, call us. We can help.
Yeah, they absolutely, please do. And I can't believe we could talk another 2 hours.
We could. I know. We could
keep going and keep going.
Heather, thank you so much. We love you from the bottom of our hearts, and we are so happy to be of any assistance to you guys, and we are family. So
you are family. We are family. We consider you part of Team Alzheimer's LA. And we are a big extended family. We love you guys, and thank you for all that you're doing to help educate and empower people as well. We are here with you in this fight, in this journey.
It chills.
Whatever you need from us, we're here for you. You guys are beautiful, beautiful people. We love you.
Well, have a good one. Please, everybody, stay safe, wash your hands, wear your masks, gloves, stay home.
Stay home.
Stay home and be socially responsible.
Exactly.
Be cognizant of being a good neighbor and doing the right thing.
For your community.
Care for each other. Love yourself, and then also love your neighbors.
Yeah, because you know why?
Why?
Tell them why.
Because love is contagious, and love is powerful, and love conquers all.
Oh.
Don't you love how she does that?
I love that.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. Mwah.
Gotta do is sing a song.